taxi industry. Of course, they've been battling the government over the 1 billion rand relief fund for the sector. It claims restrictions to working hours and the 70% passenger loading limit rule threatens to put many out of business. The industry commenced with 100% loading capacity and interprovincial operations on Monday without the permission. Medical experts have warned that the move is risky. It's our focus tonight. We'll look at some of the issues that have been raised by the industry as well as medical and social experts. Let's begin, however, with our reporter, Sipha Kema, who was out and about today, and she, of course, was tracking the movement of people and the loading of taxis. Sipha, what did you find?
Well, Cathy, I think the main thing, the focus here today was to, of course, take a look at the industry. I mean, it's been a topical issue over the last couple of weeks, especially after the 1.1 billion relief fund and the rejection coming from Santaco and, of course, the other local associations. Now, we started off in the morning following a taxi driver, of course, speaking to him about his experience during COVID. Now, of course, there are lesser people out on the roads. That means less money. 70% load, that still means less money coming in. Now, the thing is, taxi drivers are given a daily target that they have to reach. And should they not reach that target, money comes out of their own pockets as well. So the lockdown and COVID has had a huge impact on their finances, because these are people who are also breadwinners at home. These are men who are supposed to take their children to school, put food on the table. And it's become a struggle because they're also employees. They don't own these taxis, really. And then we moved on to speak to taxi owners. And, of course, they gave us their side, saying that we owe so much. Quantum is about 450,000. They pay from 13,500 to 16,000 a month just on that car. And some of them have 3 cars that they need to pay off. They need to pay drivers. They need to ensure that they maintain the vehicles as well. So it's just too much expense and less income coming in during this time. And they also mentioned something, saying that they felt as though the 1.1 billion that was handed over to them, or offered to them rather, by the Minister of Transport was actually an insult. They felt like it was a snub. The Witwatersrand African Taxi Association, one of the executives said, you know, there's this misconception about the taxi industry that it's for uneducated people. He says we need to remember, South Africans, that these are businessmen. They are running a business without assistance, any form of assistance. And he actually had a couple of things to say about this 1.1 billion relief. This is actually what he had to say.
This change is 1.3 billion. Which means it's changing it. Now this is that. Manje into engathi yasiphazamisa. Isikhathi esikuso manje asibumba ukuthi sikwenze lokho. Because that okumele ngabenziwa more than 25 years ago. Uma sithatha uhulumeni wentando yeningi. Then wasikhohlwa uhulumeni. Ikhale sikhumbula manje, and then useqhamuka nazo zonke lezi zinto that is why namalokhuza ne-grant yakhe inama requirements amaningi okufuneka alungiswe long time ago. Then sethi manje ukuze uqualify ukuthi uthole this grant kufuneka kube ne 1 2 3 4. And kunenkulumo embi ekhulunywa abantu ethi abantu bama-taxi tax abayibhadali. Ivikele unkulumo. Akekho umuntu ongayibhadala i-South African tax.
All right, let's bring into this conversation then the National Taxi Alliance's Theo Malele and Professor Jeffrey Mpatlele, who is from the South African Medical Research Council. Theo, perhaps let me begin with you. Of course, you've had an opportunity in the last 24 hours to engage with the minister in terms of what the concerns are. Do you feel that you've been able to make some headway in those discussions?
Well, good evening and thanks for having me. Well, the minister indicated that he had presented grievances to the NCCC, and that the NCCC was still to ponder on those issues, and that he will only revert to us latest tomorrow or Thursday. So basically, the talks were basically cordial, but not substantive. So we'll only be getting something tangible out of the latest by Thursday.
Has he managed to convince you to continue abiding by the legislation, so to load at a 70% capacity until you're given the green light to do any more?
Well, he said that he really felt the pain that the taxi industry was going through in terms of lost revenue, and that because there's a question of maintenance on vehicles, question of repayment of installments, wages, and association fees. So he was very empathetic with the industry, and that he also wants to see us getting out of this quagmire.
Professor Mphahlele, you're with the South African Medical Research Council. When you look then at the practical steps of taxis loading 100% capacity, what is that likely to do to the spread of COVID-19?
Hello, Cathy, and good evening to the listeners. So this is unfortunate, but it's not unexpected, I must say. But in terms of the risk of transmission of the virus, obviously 100% capacity loading is going to increase the risk. And maybe what needs to be looked at would be the risk reduction measures that could be put in place. And this could include making sure that all the passengers have to wear masks, and all the passengers have to be sanitized before boarding, and also sanitizing things that are frequently touched, like windows and the handles for opening the doors. So these are some of the risk reduction measures that the taxi industry could implement.
Sure. Theo, let me come back to you then. Are these things that you are implementing?
Yes, indeed. On a daily basis, every morning, these vehicles, before leaving, they get disinfected, even some overnight, and passengers are sanitized. And we also ensure that every person that gets aboard has a mask on, and so should the driver.
Sipha, is this what you saw on the ground as you were going out and about with taxi drivers and commuters?
Not what I saw. Everyone had a mask on, but they weren't being sanitized. Commuters who were climbing on, especially early in the morning during the pickup time, when they're picking commuters that are heading on to work in the morning, around about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. It's literally just come in, go out, come in, go out. People are climbing in, touching surfaces without it being sanitized, and that is a major concern, as said, of course, by the professor as well.
Sure. Theo, you don't seem to be doing, at least consistently, what you're saying that the industry could commit to doing.
Well, we are doing. It's just that there would be, sporadic, incidences here and there where perhaps there is no compliance. But in as far as we are concerned, we have people at every taxi rank that are responsible for doing that.
Sure, but commuters don't just board taxis at taxi ranks, Theo. They board taxis along the way, wherever a taxi can stop. And so it wouldn't be enough to just have people at taxi ranks.
Certainly, which is why we've requested that each and every taxi should have a sanitizer on board, so that as and when they pick up people along the route, they're able to can sanitize them. So, and we would also want to request, the public at large to insist that these things happen. Because ideally, yes, we want to see this thing happen 100%. Unfortunately, we cannot be at all these places at the same time. But we would also like to encourage people to report such incidences so that we nip this in the bud.
Professor Mphahlele, how can commuters, individuals, minimize their own risk, especially if, many people are in a situation where they don't have a choice but to get onto taxis?
Sure. Indeed, it will take, a shared responsibility to reduce the risk. So some of the things that can be done would be maybe, changing masks frequently. So instead of carrying one mask, for example, it could be that if you can afford, you are able to buy, 2 or 3 masks that you can use a day, and then you change them frequently. The other thing the commuters could do would be to buy their own sanitizers so that they can sanitize frequently, actually sanitize before, during, and after boarding, because it will be one way of just reducing the risk. And if you are in a taxi, because you are sitting in close proximity, just to make sure that everybody is wearing masks. And the taxi owners should just insist that if passengers do not have masks, they shouldn't board, because this is putting others at risk. We know that if it's only a few individuals who are wearing masks, those who are not wearing masks, they are putting the rest at risk.
Theo, let me come back to you. Post your meeting with the minister, will taxis at least not load at 100% capacity until you're given the green light to do so? Or are you going to continue breaking the law?
No, we're not necessarily breaking the law. It's just that, people were frustrated in that the minister took forever to convene a meeting with the industry. We want to abide by the rules and regulations as spelled out. And we are also optimistic that by tomorrow or by Thursday, we should get the green light as to what is this that we need to do going forward.
But in the interim, you're going to continue breaking the law?
We're not breaking the law.
Theo, if the law says you're loading at 70% capacity and the industry is saying we're loading at 100% capacity, you're breaking the legislation. There's no two ways about it. Regardless of the kind of negotiations that are taking place between yourselves and the minister, it hasn't been put in black and white. It has not been gazetted. So as far as the law is concerned, taxi drivers who do load at 100% capacity are breaking the law.
Well, I would want to concede with that. We also looked at what is currently happening within the airspace. We realized that aeroplanes are now loading 100% and doing interprovincial operations, and we need to ensure that we sanitize passengers and ensure that the vehicles are disinfected at the same time, and not compromise getting into a taxi without wearing of a mask.
All right.
We're trying to ensure that happens.
All right. Theo Molefe is with the National Taxi Alliance. He's their spokesperson. Professor Jeffrey Mpatlele with the South African Medical Research Council. Let me thank you for your time. Let me wrap it up with you in studio, Sipha. In as far as that loading of 100% capacity, what was the level of law enforcement on that issue?
None. There was no law enforcement present. That was on Monday as well as today. Of course, there are some taxi alliances, associations that have opted to continue with the 70%, such as the Witwatersrand African Taxi Association, as well as the Faraday Taxi Association. They're saying they're waiting for the green light from the minister, of course, because they're not directly under Santaco. So they're just waiting for the minister to give them the go-ahead. But what they are doing as of tomorrow is actually increasing taxi fare by 7 rand.
Sure. That's quite a significant increase in the price of the fare then. Sipha, Kema, let's leave it there, and I have no doubt you'll stay on top of that story for us. As you heard, we're expecting some kind of word from the NCCC in the next 2 days over what exactly the way forward is for the taxi industry. We'll have